I used to say yes to everything. Someone would invite me to dinner, last minute, no warning, and even if I had something planned for myself, I'd say yes. Not because I wanted to go, not because I thought about it and decided that the dinner was worth it, but because I would say yes automatically. And then I would sit there the whole time thinking about the thing I gave up to be there. And for a long time, I told myself that was just being a good person, being there for people, and being someone others could count on. But honestly, it had nothing to do with that. I just didn't know how to say no. And what's worse is that I didn't even know that that was a problem. Because that's the thing about not having boundaries. It doesn't feel like a missing thing. It feels like just who you are. The person who is always available, the person who never makes things difficult, the person who goes along with things even when they don't want to. And it showed up everywhere for me, not just with dinners, but when someone judged something about me, the way I dressed, something I said, the choices I was making, I didn't just brush it off. I took it home with me, and then I turned it over, and then I started adjusting myself to fit what they expected. Like I was a first draft waiting for someone to tell me I was finished. And I know a lot of people live like this without naming it. So today I want to talk about what's actually happening underneath it, because it's not what most people think. Most content about boundaries will tell you to say yes more, to stand up for yourself, to stop letting people go over you. And that advice is not wrong, but it completely skips the part that matters. Because the problem was never that I didn't know how to say no, but the problem was that somewhere deep down, I didn't believe that I have a good enough reason to not say no. Nedra Tawwab, a therapist who wrote Set Boundaries, Find Peace. And I know I have talked a lot about this book, but it's actually one of my favorite. Puts it this way: boundaries are not walls. They are the clearest expression of what you need to function well. The clearest expression of what you actually need. And when you grow in an environment where your needs were treated like secondary or like something inconvenient or like something less important than keeping the peace, you'll learn very early to stop expressing them. Not because someone told you, but because you figured out that being easier was safer. Saying yes kept people happy. Shrinking yourself a little meant less friction, less tension, and less risk of losing the connection. Peter Walker, a therapist who studies how people respond to feeling unsafe, calls this the fawn response. And most people know fight, flight, and freeze. But the fourth response is the fawn, which is the automatic move toward pleasing people, agreeing with people, and making yourself smaller and easier. Not because you want to, but because you learned that's how you stay safe. And here is what hit me when I first understood this. The dinners I went to when I didn't want to go, the judgment I took home and edited myself for, the 100 small ways I gave my yes when I meant no, none of that was kindness. It was a survival response. I had been running on autopilot since before I was old enough to question it. And the thing that nobody tells you about not having boundaries is what it does to you over time. Because it's not just that you end up tired, or because it's not that you feel used sometimes, but it slowly disconnects you from yourself. Because every time you say yes when you mean no, you send the same message that what you want doesn't matter as much as what they want. And that message compounds over time, the way we talked about in video 6. Small things repeated daily build into something much larger than any individual moment. Say yes when you mean no enough times, then eventually you lose touch with what your yes actually means. You stop checking in with yourself before you answer, because you know already that the answer is going to be yes. And at some point, you look up and realize that you've been living in response to everyone else instead of in alignment with yourself. Brené Brown writes, Daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves, even when we risk disappointing others. Even when we risk disappointing others. That's the part that stops most of us. Because disappointing people doesn't just feel bad for someone who learned that being agreeable kept them happy, kept them safe. Disappointing people feels like a threat, like something important might break, like they might leave, like you might lose something you cannot afford to lose. So you keep going to the dinners, you keep editing yourself, you keep giving away pieces of your evening, of your opinion, of your identity to make sure that everyone else stays comfortable. Mark Manson, in his book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Flip, in chapter 8, The Importance of Saying No, he says, we all must give a flip about something. In order to value something, and to value something, we must reject what is not that something. To value X, we must reject non-X. But here's what I want you to sit with for a moment. Every time you do that, every time you hand over something that belonged to you, you're teaching yourself that your time is negotiable, that your identity is adjustable, that who you are is something that needs to be approved before it's allowed to exist. And that lesson, one yes at a time, becomes the story you live by. So what do you actually do with this? I'm not gonna tell you to go set dramatic boundaries with the hardest person in your life, because that's not where it starts. It starts smaller than you think. The next time someone asks something of you, before you answer, just pause. One breath, 1 second of checking in with yourself, with what you actually want, before your automatic yes kicks in. And if the answer is no, give yourself permission to say it. You don't need a better excuse. You don't need a perfect excuse. You don't need to over-explain. Just say it. Nader Tawwab says something that I think about all the time. No is a complete sentence. You don't have to justify choosing yourself. And I know the first few times feel wrong, like you're being selfish, like you're becoming someone difficult, but that discomfort is real. It's just your nervous system adjusting to a new question, one where your needs count as much as everyone else. And I still now think about saying yes or no to things. But the only difference now is when I say yes, I actually mean it. And when I say no, I don't spend the next 3 days apologizing for it inside my head. The shift didn't happen because I read the right book or found the right script for saying no or learned to use the right techniques. It happened because slowly, one decision at a time, I started believing that what I needed was worth protecting, that my time was mine, that I wasn't a draft waiting to be approved, that I was already as I was, enough to be worth defending. And that belief didn't come first. It came after the small no, and then the second, and then the third. Until one day, it is just how I live. You were never the problem. You just were not convinced yet that you were allowed to take up space. Drop a comment and tell me what is one thing you keep saying yes to, even when everything inside of you is saying no. If you like my content, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to my channel. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.